This is a show for grown-ups.
And they say bad words.
And they say bad words.
Say final warning.
Final warning.
Hello and welcome to the Pot of Blunders. My name is Dave Magnuski, and I'm here with Skeeter Green of Skeeter Green Productions. How's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me on the show. Lets me push my book, Cryptocodex.
Yeah, that's why you have that background. You know, it's all making sense now.
Yeah, it's all coming together. You know, I even put my name and the company on there.
Saw that, and I don't want to praise myself too heavily, but I nailed it. You know.
Yeah, no, you got that right off. I mean, I have two of them on there, so I'm trying to.
I'm like Scooter Black. That's not it. That's not it.
Yeah, no. That I did get a lot of that growing up, though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, big time.
My last name is Magnuski, so I got all kinds of whack stuff for that. So I feel your pain.
I'm sure. Yeah. Kids are terrible unless they buy role-playing books. Then they're awesome.
Well, they're still a little terrible, but not. I mean, there's a gradient. You know? Yeah. So before we talk about Cryptocodex, I wanted to ask about your first Kickstarter.
Okay.
A book that I love dearly, Crypt of the Science Wizard. All right.
Crypt of the Science Wizard, my homage to Tomb of Horrors.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Tomb of Horrors so much, I have the tattoo. So.
Oh, that's dope. That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's how you can find me at a convention. It's like that guy with that thing on his arm. Oh, it's the green devil face. Yeah, okay, now I get it.
I know that one. So for those people who don't know, what is Crypt of the Science Wizard all about?
Crypt of the Science Wizard was obviously my homage to Tomb of Horrors, but it was me betting on myself in the RPG industry. I had been a longtime writer and developer for Frog God Games, and it got to the point where I started to wonder if I could do this on my own. And they were cool enough to, you know, we worked out an opportunity for me to just strike out on my own. And I decided to write an adventure from, you know, very beginning to very end, all on my own, just to see if I could do it. So I did a lot of research about actual tombs, you know, from Egypt and how they were constructed. So that's one of the things in Crypt of the Science Wizard that kind of catches people off guard. There are unfinished parts, and there are staging areas, and there are mechanics of the tomb that were lifted from actual tombs. So some of that is very realistic, and I wanted to put obstacles in Crypt that really challenged the players, to the point that I even put some stuff in there just to screw with players who think they know so much, because there's the obligatory chessboard floor in there. And you know, immediately people who have played for a long time just, you know, start to pucker when they just go, oh God, how do we do this? You know, there's levers in the wall, iron levers, and they're in different positions and all of that kind of really meaty stuff. And it's been a lot of fun to watch people kind of struggle with it. So I'm terrible, I know.
Would you describe it as a murder dungeon?
No. At the very beginning, I would have, you know, 2 or 3 people maybe die out of a group, but there's not a lot of conflict in it. Like, there are only a couple of different monsters. It's really just me giving players enough rope to hang their characters. Like, if you want to be dumb in there, it will absolutely wipe you out. But so it's been released for 5th edition and Swords and Wizardry, and then last year I updated it for DCC and MCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics. And if people have an investigative personality, they can do it with very baseline, simple characters. very, first level beginning characters could totally do it if they're careful and cautious. If you're an 18th level character and you're just balls out, I'm gonna, just blow right through this, you're gonna die. I mean, you're going to. So that was what I wanted. My wife is very into detective TV shows, and her personality is very investigative. So when I was writing it, I would pitch her these ideas. I'd be like, "What do you think of this?" And she goes, "That's terrible. You should totally put that in. That is just awful to think about." And it was based off when I was with Frog God. One of the things how I got my start was doing traps in 3.0. Some of the authors hated the mechanics of the game, so they were like, "Hey, can you figure this out?" So I got really into multi-stage traps, and a lot of the obstacles in Crypt of the Science Wizard are multi-stage or complex. I like to say obstacles more than traps, because they're not necessarily something that just jumps out at you, and there are some things you cannot bypass. You just have to deal with.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a little bit of a different design philosophy than, you're gonna have X amount of encounters in a certain time period and expend X amount of resources to bypass it. I didn't do that at all.
That's, in my opinion, that's a good thing. So much of 5th edition is based on combat. It ignores a lot of the other 3 pillars of the game, or the other 2 pillars, I should say. Did you find was there any resistance to a game that is so kind of OSR-y in its feel?
It's interesting that you bring that up, because the way I wrote Crypt of the Science Wizard is for the 5th edition version, if you there are certain skill checks at certain points to do things like normal, but the skill checks don't automatically let you bypass something. It gives you more information. So the only way you can actually bypass things is coming up with a solid plan. Now for 5e, you get a little bit more insight if you make your checks. For the swords and wizardry version, if you come up with a clever idea, I give you some bonuses, and some of that is written in there. Same thing with the Dungeon Crawl Classics version, is if you're descriptive about what you're doing, say like, I feel like there's something in this, section of the wall. I really want to investigate that. And I'm like, okay, well, there's nothing right there, but really close, notice, so it's giving people some hints and tips without doing the work for them. And I've noticed as I've run this and heard other people who have run it, the players really are embracing that and really get engaged with the not being handed their victory. So if they make it out, they're just like, whoa, they get, you get the high five moment, which is absolutely what I was going for.
That's awesome. It sounds like you really put effort into differentiating it for the different systems, instead of just kind of slapping on a coat of paint, on the 5th edition one versus the sword and wizardry one.
Well, that was one of the things that I did at Frog God, is they release things under multiple rule sets, and there is a distinct way that you have to write for the different rule sets, so you can be, honorable and respectful of each rule system. Because if you just file off the numbers and go, oh yeah, I'm just going to throw a skill check in here, and I'm just going to pull a skill check out here, then people don't really like it, because they go, oh, this was written for something else. And you're just throwing some paint on it. And I figure, in the lucrative world of RPG design, spending money on these things is a bite. And especially after 2020 and what everybody has gone through, I mean, if you're going to be spending your money on one of these adventures, I want you to have at least a couple of days worth of going through and enjoying this. I mean, for the price of a movie ticket now,
hmm
which you get 2 hours of, being stuck in a room with 200 other people,
Right.
you can have several sessions hanging out with your friends and really being challenged.
Yeah.
And I think there is not as much challenge in some modules. I think you can tell a story and still be challenging. I don't think it has to be one or the other. And some people, and I'm not going to be all shitty and say who I think it is, but some people don't do that.
Yeah.
And this is not my day job. I do this because I love it. So when I put these things out, they're things I want to be proud of, and I've gotten good feedback. So I'm digging it.
Well deserved. It's what
I
I've read of your stuff. It's good
super
stuff.
appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I only tell the truth on this podcast. So your current project right now, Cryptocodex,
Yes.
it's going on until March 15th or March 16th.
March 16th.
Yeah, see, you got an extra day there.
Which is my birthday. So the Kickstarter ends right on my birthday. So if you're thinking about getting me a gift, go ahead and take a look at the Kickstarter and maybe throw a pledge at it.
You should, absolutely. And this will air while the thing is still going on, so we want to make sure that's going to get out there in time. What is Cryptocodex?
So Cryptocodex is it's a book of the monsters and inhabitants of the setting where Crypt of the Science Wizard lives. The setting is going to be a Kickstarter in 2022 when I get some things gathered for that. But as I was writing Crypt of the Science Wizard level 2, I decided that one was going to be more combat oriented.
Okay.
So I didn't want to just use, basic monsters in there. I wanted it to have the flavor of the setting. So that means I'm coming up with new creatures. And then I came up with so many of them. Yeah. And then it started pulling me in other directions. So I started creating even more. And I was like, shit, I should just put a book together. And then it was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
Cryptocodex is the Monster and Inhabitants book. There are 50 entries in there. Wow. There are not 50 entries. There are 50 distinct monsters. There are like 40 entries because I have these weird like elephant hybrids.
Yep.
Mixed with a bunch of different stuff in there. And, I got some dinosaurs in there that are not your typical. So there's a lot of crazy stuff, but the title, I wanted it to, my big thing now is mixing Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics because I really love that whole Thundar the Barbarian, Herculoids, heavy metal kind of mix where you could have a caveman and some beast dude with a machine gun. And I'm like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have the science, but also have the fantasy. So the codex is like, I have this spell book with this forbidden knowledge. And then cryptozoology is the scientific study of these weird monsters that we have in real life. And I was like, okay. Oh, wait, there's a title. Plus, it has Crypt in it. So it keeps the link back to Crypt of the Science Wizard. And it just very fortuitous. It worked out so well.
It's funny you mentioned the elephants because I was looking through your Kickstarter and I saw that there was like 6 or 7 different elephant variants. What's up with the elephants?
So the setting for Crypt of the Science Wizard is very desert in one patch and very jungle in another patch. And I was trying to find, so like without getting too crazy, what kind of things are going to be in both, settings. And I'm like, okay, giant lizard. Well, giant lizard is in every base of every book. And I'm like, well, what's in Africa? Elephants. Oh man, if somebody took elephants like some crazy wizard did with the owl bear and
Yep.
just started mixing it. And then, yeah, I was off to the races. There's a surprisingly disturbing amount you could do with elephants as base creatures. I mean, it's the same thing. Like one of the things I have is a rocket fund. So it's basically a griffin, but it's elephant size with a rock front of it. And yeah,
Holy shit.
yeah, it's huge and bad news. And yeah, not everybody is going to use those. But another one is a humafint. So it's basically a minotaur with an elephant's head, except he's bigger. And yeah, he will mess you right up if you don't feed him peanuts. They're also afraid of mice, that kind of. No, I'm just messing. But yeah, so that's the kind of thing. That's how the book built. Is I would have one idea, or one stupid idea, and then I start joking about other stupid ideas, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's viable. I could do that.
So go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and I was just thinking that was the same thing with the dinosaurs. I came up with, okay, we're gonna have regular dinosaurs, and I'm just like, all right, let's get mutant crazy. So I have Trirex, which is a 3-headed T-Rex, because why not? They're not bad enough to start with, so let's put 2 more heads on this thing and make it faster.
I love it. That'd be pants-shittingly terrifying to have a 3-headed T-Rex like chasing your party down.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's yeah, because if it's attacking one of the dinosaurs attacking it, there's still 2 heads to get you. So and there's a oh god, what was it? There's another one that's Spinosaurus, that's like a giant sea anemone with 6 legs that is on the ground. So this sea anemone with all this tentacles and stuff can chase you through the jungle. And it's just it's like, man, what is wrong in my brain?
It's paying dividends, so keep it going.
Yeah, it's different. I haven't seen that anywhere.
And that's what's beautiful about it. It's completely, bug nuts insane, and it's beautiful. So yeah, people need to get this book. It's great.
Well, and one of the things was, after I come up with these insane ideas, I have to put some backstory to it. So I have to think about, how did this thing develop?
Yeah.
Which actually led to me compiling this historical document for the setting, where I have the 4 ages that came before the current age. And there's an age of science, and then that gets wiped out. There's an age of faith, and that gets wiped out. And there's an age of magic, and that gets wiped out. And the age that they're in now is this mishmash of all these things that have been left over from years and years and years ago. Because in regular fantasy, an owlbear is not a new creation.
Right.
It's been around for a while. Well, why did somebody make that?
Because they're a dick.
Yeah, maybe some wizard is a total dick, and he's like, I'm going to create this thing. Well, why do you create it? Because you want it to hurt somebody else. So there's a conflict. And maybe that's a historical event. They were weapons created to wipe out these people, or some, I don't know. People can put any history they want to it, but that's the rabbit hole I go down, and I just start mining these ideas, and I'm like, that's insane. I'm writing it down.
So if someone doesn't own Crypt of the Science Wizard, do you think there's still a lot of value in this book for them?
Oh, absolutely. If for no other reason, people can thumb through this and get ideas of how to incorporate some of these things. One of my favorite monsters out of here is called an attactopus.
I saw that, yeah.
And it's basically weaponized octopi. And they're land-based, because octopuses are cool. They can do so much stuff. And they look like they came from another planet. I mean, so yeah, I decided to take those and put them on land, and you could use those anywhere. There's a lot of stuff in here that is like a slight variation on fairly familiar topics
Hmm.
or trends that just have a little something else that makes you go, I'm not sure. Because if you've been a RPG player for any amount of years, you start to get in that habit of, oh, that's an orc, or oh, that's a giant, that's an ogre.
Mhm.
I kind of know what's going to happen. But with some of these, once you get the description, you're going to be like, um, that's not from the core book.
Right.
I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know what to do with that. And I just wanted to bring back some of the unknown to monster books.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've been playing D&D for over 40 years, and
Mhm.
I have gotten a little jaded about things.
Right. Yeah, as it
So
happens.
yeah, this brings me back to, and it's the ridiculous teenage years of, oh, I'm going to put antlers on this monster, and I'm going to make it so much weird. It sounds stupid, and a lot of them are. And this book is kind of like that, except they're playable. You could plug and play these things super easy.
There's nothing wrong with goofy monsters. They can be silly, they can be exciting. It's a fantasy game, and things should be fun. And it
Right.
sounds like you had a fucking blast writing these creatures.
Well, and not everything in here is an opponent.
Right.
There's a couple of things that are beneficial to the party. One of the
Mm.
creatures I made was a camelpede.
Okay.
So it's a centipede, giant size,
Mhm.
that's like a camel. And the deep desert merchants and stuff have these merchant trains with these camelpedes where they
Mhm.
have huge water sacks on their back. And some of my friends were like, what the hell is that for? I was like, I thought it would be fun.
That's a great answer.
It's a nice semi-playful herd animal that's actually useful,
Yeah.
that you would use in a game. It doesn't always have to be giant lizards and camels and horses and stuff. Yeah, I got this bug that holds its own water and can give us water. It's like, well, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, there's some of those. There's a couple of little Monday. There's one I just got art for today.
Mm.
That's a drog, and it's basically the little Calot dude from John Carter of Mars.
Mhm. Yep.
It's him, and just because I think that thing is cool as hell.
It is. You're right.
A little frog dog. It's like, hell yeah, sign me up for that.
Yeah, put him in. What the hell?
Sure. Yeah. And I think there's like 4 or 5 different sizes. I mean, I made them. You could have a little pupper or a great Drago. It's fun. I want to have fun when I'm doing this.
That's what I think I love about your designs, is that the fun you're having is evident. It's sometimes you see these things that come out and it's just like the person's going through the motions. They're doing a job, and it's
Yeah.
abundantly clear they're just, this is their paycheck. They need to get it out. They have a deadline to make.
Yeah.
You're having
Definitely.
a blast, and
Oh
it's
my
so
God.
clear.
I love doing these in conventions,
Hmm.
and because virtual conventions have been difficult and tedious and hard to kind of get the same level of excitement for.
Yeah.
Oh my God, when we're done with playtests, I've been playtesting Crypt level 2.
Mm.
And when we're done with the playtest, people are just like, holy smokes, this was intense. And I'm like, yeah, wasn't it? I will have to say that one of the monsters from Cryptocodex that is in Crypt level 2 is excessive, but
Okay.
but it's a lot of fun, and has made for some very memorable adventuring.
So these are all currently statted out for MCC and DCC.
Yes.
Are you going to be taking a swing at some other rule sets with this?
I think for these, because a lot of these are variations on monsters that exist in other rule sets, I
Okay.
probably won't have any of these until I have the setting book.
Sure.
And then the setting book is going to be statted out for DCC, MCC, Swords and Wizardry, and 5e. So there will be a section, and I have my fingers crossed. I'm going to try and pull something off. The plan for the setting book is to actually be 3 books in a slipcase.
Okay. That's
so
huge.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I like going with the digest size books for this idea. So I'm going to try it and see how that works. So that'll be a lot of figuring, because the books, because of the different rule sets, are all going to be different sizes.
Right.
So yeah, it may not work. that may be a poor judgment on my case, but that wouldn't be the first time.
Hey, you got to pursue your dream. If you see it in your head, why the hell not look into it, right?
I'm going to try it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Right. So when you're designing these creatures from scratch, I know you come up with the concept. How do you go about statting them out? Like, is there some kind of tool you use, or some kind of guidelines for this, or is it just
kind of because I've played so many different rule sets from the little brown books,
Yep.
All the way up to 5th edition, you can kind of see how monsters progress and how their stats and the game mechanics change.
Yep.
So very few monsters are whole cloth a brand new idea. So I can start by finding, well, what's this similar to? And then see, okay, well, I want this to be a little bit tougher, so maybe I'll give it an extra hit dice or something, but its skin is softer, so lower the AC. And then, just little tweaks like that. It's a lot like a recipe for dinner or something. Find something similar, start adding some spices. Some things don't work, so that's why the playtest has been invaluable.
Sure.
Some things I've had to dial way back because it was like, holy shit, what were you thinking? But yeah, I in the Cryptocodex, I have some stats for like immature insects, because for some of the super low level stuff I was doing as introductory, the ant and the beetle, their armor class was so high, it's like the characters couldn't hit them. It's like, that's not fun. So I included a creature that's pretty basic, but it's scaled down so more people can actually be involved with it.
That's great design. I mean,
so it's one of the things you got to look at is there's so much material for RPGs at this point.
Yeah.
Where are the gaps? And what makes sense to fill those gaps? And when it's for a specific game, like if it's for my specific campaign, awesome. Yeah, this thing fits. And then you look at, well, does this seem valuable for other people? And a lot of times it is, because those gaps are there. And, game masters are busy. They don't want to have to figure this stuff out from scratch every time. It's like, you don't want to have to experiment to figure out how to cook a biscuit. You just want a good biscuit recipe.
Yeah.
So it's a cookbook of monster ideas.
We talked about a bunch of your monsters so far. If you had to pick one of your babies that best exemplifies Cryptocodex as a whole, which one would you choose?
The Titans.
Okay. All right.
Because they're not classic Titans like in mythology. When I got the art done for them, I talked to the artist, the mighty Ed Bickford.
All right.
He did the art for him, and I said, okay, the Titan of Law I want him to look like Galactus, but change him enough so I don't get banged for IP issues. I want the Titan of Chaos to look like Darkseid. Again, don't let me get thrashed for IP issues. And then MCC has artificial intelligences, which are the ones who grant programs, which is basically granting spells to monsters and stuff. The AI for the Titans looks like Dr. Manhattan, sort of.
Right.
So
just enough.
Yeah. And again, change the IP so I don't get sued to death. But even if I did get sued by somebody, I'm such a small potatoes and I'm not relying on this to, pay the rent. So, but I also didn't want to directly rip anybody off. That's not cool. But you can definitely see the inspiration for it. Jack Kirby. Anything I can get with Kirby art, sign me up.
Yeah, he was amazing.
Yeah.
Really.
So, but the Titans and the way I describe them is people have heard of them. They are legendary creatures. They are ultra magical giants. That's how I describe them. And their powers are pretty ridiculous. Just because a lot of people in the DCC and MCC community told me, well, when you get, like, everything tops out at 10th level. And once you get to 7th to 10th level, there's nothing really left to challenge you. I'm like, hold my beer. So, yeah. I have the experience from Swords and Wizardry with Frog God Games of writing higher level Swords and Wizardry stuff with Rappanathic and several other modules that got done. So I can, everything breaks down at a certain point.
Yeah.
But you can still challenge folks when things are breaking down.
The higher level stuff is so difficult to plan for because by then, like you said, the game's already kind of broken mechanically. You don't know what powers the players will bring to bear, and so few people get to that point. I know a lot of designers are like, well, I'm not going to waste my effort. But
well, I was actually thinking about this today, and I think at the point where the game breaks down mechanically for the characters and they just get super powerful, I think the design goal is to get away from challenging the characters and start challenging the players.
Okay.
Like put the characters in a situation where the players have to figure out what the right thing to do is. And it needs to be, I mean, they're powerful. They're going to be able to do anything. They just have to know what the anything is.
Right.
And make it more of a, okay, I need to gather the information to find out what massive power that I have needs to be used right here.
Right.
Or, certain items. Oh yeah, that vampire, I know we need to stake him. That's super easy. And it's like, well, this is a special vampire and you have to stake him with a petrified tree from XYZ forest a million miles away. Otherwise he just comes back. That kind of stuff where it's a little bit more epic tale instead of, oh, we go into this village and burn it to the ground.
Right. It's interesting about the changing goalposts when you're designing for different levels, because at first it's almost like a teaching program where you're like, here's how you roll a dice to hit somebody. In the middle, like, okay, now you're kind of a badass. Now you can kind of like throw your weight around and maybe get involved more regionally or nationally. Right. Then at the high levels, it's interesting. I had never really considered the fact that at that high level, you're not challenging characters anymore. You really are going after the players themselves.
Yeah, there gets to be, and when you look at the classic modules that are higher level that have stood the test of time, like I will say, Tomb of Horrors.
Yep.
I mean, that's designed for 10th level characters, and in first edition, AD&D, 10th level characters are the lords of the realm.
Right.
I mean, they are the princes and barons and stuff like that. Those are established characters with strongholds, and they are responsible for the mundane people's livelihoods of the kingdoms that they're around, and yada, yada, yada. But that module said, hey, give me 8 of you, and I am going to kill you wholesale, which, and it's with things like pit traps. Right. And, you know, here's a mummy that you can only destroy by touching a crown and a scepter in a certain way. And, you know, here's these doors that are locked, and if you cut them, they bleed, and you know, all this kind of stuff in there that's like, yeah, my character can probably just disintegrate the doors, but I don't know what that's going to do to me.
Right.
You know,
you can't just be like, I'm going to roll an insight check, and then, you know, that'll tell me what I have to do here. Like, there's none of that. You can't. Sorry. It might give you a hint, but.
And, you know, there are other examples of that, but I feel like it becomes more of an impetus on challenging the player behind the character.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, if they have a machine gun and want to go into a dungeon and shoot orcs, yeah, you can do that all day long. But what happens when the orcs figure it out and change the scenario around? Then the player has to be engaged. And that's always been one of my design things. If a player's not engaged, if they're just going through the motions, oh, I open the door, kill him. Oh, I open the door and kill him. That's not fun for anybody.
Right.
So, yeah, I want to keep players on their toes.
So aside from the setting itself and the science fantasy aspect of it, what about DCC and MCC were so intriguing to you as a designer?
A lot. I actually just came to this a couple of days ago. For me, and that's not, I'm not being the evangelist for DCC or MCC, but I'm not doing it. The community that's around DCC and MCC are always trying to figure out what they can do within the rules. It's like, okay, what can I do? You know, here's a rule set. So what does that mean? What are the things that I can do? And it feels like a lot of times in 5th edition, especially, it's telling you what you can't do. Like, this guy can't do this. That's the providence of this character over here. So you can't do that, but they can. And Swords and Wizardry has more of the open end part of the DCC, but it's more, if I break it down, and somebody's going to get mad about me saying this, but Swords and Wizardry is like Lord of the Rings. Like you're going to get 9 people together and you're going to go off on this epic quest, and you know, we've got the dwarf and the elf and the halfling and all this stuff, and yeah. DCC is literally like one of the parts of the movie Heavy Metal. It's like Den of Earth. This dude shows up in the middle of nowhere, has no resources, and it's like, okay, here's these 10 beastmen. Do what you got to do to overcome this. And it's like, I have a loincloth. It's like, okay, use that to strangle him. You know, it rejuvenated some creative juices for me because it really spoke to the setting that I wanted to do. And it was a lot easier to write in the system. And then now I can convert it to other systems because I have the seed idea. So I am grateful to the community, and they've been very accepting, very nice people, which seems weird because, I mean, the OSR and the 5e crowds are very, let's fight. I don't want to fight. I'm too old. I'm tired.
I just want to play games, goddammit.
Right. Just shut up and play some games. So, and that's not everybody. So before Nathan gets in trouble, that is strictly the opinion of Skeeter Green and no one else.
It's okay. I agree with you. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that it was freeing for me, which may not be a good thing.
I think if people read your books, they understand that it is a very good thing, because we shouldn't be hampering creativity. We shouldn't be steering away from more old style games. With that, like you said, it's challenging the player, not the character as much. Even at low levels too. That's the case.
Right.
Because not every trap, like you said, some traps you can't get around. It's just tough shit, and you can't roll your way out of it. You have to think, and that's scary for some people, and that's okay.
Yeah. You're gonna. So an example of this was I used to run a Pathfinder game, and old friend of mine, my wife, and she's a teacher, so one of her teacher co-workers played. Pathfinder was perfect for them because they did not have the experience in RPGs. So with the list of abilities and things they could do, it was easier for them to look at the list and go, oh, well, I'll use perception. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to use a different skill. In the more open, DCC Swords and Wizardry, it's expected that the people playing already know that kind of stuff. And some DMs and GMs get really like, well, describe what you want to do. And for new players, that can be very daunting because they go, I don't know what's available. I've never played this. This is literally the first time I've sat down to be in a role-playing game. What are my options? I'll look at the door. Okay, how do you look at the door? Stop pestering me, man. I don't know. What is the right terminology to use?
Right.
So that's one of the things that I think different editions appeal to different people for different reasons.
Yeah.
And my personal soapbox is that whole edition war thing. I think that's stupid. I think people who do that are counterproductive, and it's role-playing games are like pizza. Everybody has their favorite, and they're all pizza.
Right.
Pizza is good. I don't like pineapple on my pizza, but some people love it. I'm not going to hate on you for that, except I don't get cooked fruit, man. It's just weird.
I think it boils down to the idea that there's a wrong kind of fun to have.
Yeah, I am 100% against that.
Especially like now, man, if you can find something that gives you a little jolt of joy, cling to it with every last breath you have.
After the last year we've had,
God,
if you can squeeze joy out of almost anything, please do it.
Yep, absolutely. Speaking of joyful things in the past year, post-apocalypse fantasy has been around for, as long as we've had fantasy. Biblical shit is heavily post-apocalyptic. What is it about that that's so enduring to people? Why do people keep going back to the horrific end times over and over and over again?
Honestly, I think it is the desire to overcome. Like, your daily existence, it just wears you down, and sometimes you get to the weekend and you're just like, I made it. Oh my God, I made it. So when people are in a fantasy setting, they want to be, okay, I want the worst scenario you can think of, because by God, me and my character and my character's scrawny little three-legged dog are going to get in here and we're going to kick ass and we are going to overcome everything because I can't do it in my daily life.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that sounds super bleak, but I have had people get up and be almost at tears because, I caught them at a certain point where they were upset about something and they got the release in this game and they got some joy. And there was a girl at a convention who got up and she was, under her eyes, and I was like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, what happened? Is everything okay?"
Yeah.
And she was like, "This was so much fun." And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
You're sending me mixed messages. I don't know what to do. I'm sorry. I don't know, but it's, and I've had that too. I have run games. That was like the high five thing. I was like, when a table full of strangers overcomes something and they all jump up and they high five each other and they're like, yeah. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
there's nothing I can say or do that is going to be as cool as that.
Yeah.
Letting people have that release, and I've been part of those groups. When you overcome, it's huge, and it's something you talk about forever. I'm still talking about some of those games.
Yeah. But that's the magic and the power of this hobby. People can denigrate it by saying it's just wish fulfillment or power fantasy and all that, but it's more than that. It's, for a lot of people, like you said, this is one shot that you have to overcome things that you're powerless to face in real life. We can't control things.
And that's why I think podcasts and webcasts and YouTube channels of people playing D&D, there's a segment of the group who says, "Oh, that's stupid. Why do people even do that?" Who cares? Don't watch it then.
Right.
But if somebody else looks at that and is interested in it and decides, man, I'm going to watch this all the time. Critical Role, I'm talking to you. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's nothing but great for the hobby. You get more people in there. Maybe somebody who watched Critical Role comes in and writes D&D 8th edition, and it's the best version of the game ever.
Yeah.
Who are we to say where the next, Gary or Dave or anybody is coming from?
I was listening to an interview a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying, I forget where it was, my memory is shot, but they're saying more people now are coming into the hobby through these podcasts like Critical Role than, in our generation, it was your older brother had, the red box.
Right.
For me, that's how it was. And
Yeah.
like, what is a monster manual? What is that troll thing on the cover? Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Now,
No,
it's the internet.
Things are so visual, and the production quality, oh my God, so amazing. I think that's fantastic. People are on their phones, most of the time, but if they're choosing to spend that time watching a D&D show, awesome. Very cool. Do that. I have met some wonderful people. I do a show with my buddy Zach Glazer. Goddamn it, Zach! We've been able to interview people who are heroes to both of us. I got to be in a game with Satine Phoenix and Mike Merles and Chris Lindsay at I think it was Gary Con several years ago, run by Alex Kammer from Gamehole Con. So, and it was just stupid luck. I asked Alex, I said, "Hey man, you got an extra seat at your table?" He was like, "Yeah, I actually do." And I was like, "Oh, cool." I had no idea who all the other players were. And I sat down and I'm like, I am way out of my league.
Like, I have fucked this up somehow, but this is great.
This is the most ridiculous incident. Now, that being said, I probably have more D&D game history than those guys because I'm older than they are.
Sure.
I mean, I'm like 10 years older than those guys, but still, it was an amazing experience, lots of fun, and totally sweet people.
Nice.
Just great. Very open, accommodating. It was a lot of fun.
So it's good to hear, I think the hobby just breeds people like that because you have to be cooperative at a table. Otherwise, you don't get invited back.
In general, you do. There are some people who have definitely been fuckers.
Wow.
I have run into only a couple, but yeah, it would be shocking for some people to hear some of the stuff that I know.
After we stop recording, I'm on pick your
Yeah,
brain on that.
I'll hook you up with that knowledge. Yeah.
I don't want to shit on anybody on air.
Yeah.
So my last formal question for you
Hmm.
is, if you had to guess at what sort of apocalypse will ultimately sweep through and usher us into our bleak future, what would you put your money on?
Human stupidity.
All right, yep. That's the betting favorite right now, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go with human stupidity, but I think that's going to be in response to probably a natural disaster. I think a natural disaster is going to be what wipes out humanity.
And that's why we need more role players, because we're already practiced at overcoming this shit, and we're the best bet for, survival.
Right?
And probably farmers too,
That's exactly it. I was just talking with my wife about this the other day. She was asking me who I would have as a team
Mhm.
of survivalists in like a wasteland, and I was like, well, obviously one of our gamer friends. And she's like, gamer friends? They can't even walk 100 feet. And I was like, but they would have a plan for how to gather resources, and we would do that. And she's like, that's a pretty solid choice. I'm like, I'm going to call Bill Webb, who has run every kind of wilderness game ever conceived and who loves hex crawling. I'm
Mhm.
like, he's going to know how to do some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I need to get water out of this rock. Well, I'm sure there's a way. Suspending it in a tree in a shaded area, condensation, I don't know. It sounded stupid even as I was saying it. So I am not going to survive.
We'd figure it out. We'd be all right.
I'll fight the raccoons.
There we go. See, thank you.
Which is a story from a convention.
Okay. You want to tell it now, or should it be an off-the-air story?
I almost fought a raccoon because I was very drunk at a convention one time.
I thought it meant in like a game.
No, it was a parking lot. Yeah, no, that was I swore that I would not be telling that story ever again, but sure enough, it will not go away. And I think it was Gamehole. I think it was Gamehole in Wisconsin.
Well, thank you for your
Big
service.
raccoon too.
Like, we're all big in Wisconsin. It's all the cheese,
It lured me between two cars.
Clever girl.
Yeah, clever girl. Yeah, that's what. And literally, the only way that thing did not kill me is when I got to the back of the car and the area was opening up. I'm just like, this raccoon has lured me into the parking lot. I got my two people behind me saying, Skeeter, don't do that. Skeeter, don't do that. You're gonna be sorry. You're gonna Skeeter. Just like, and then I stopped and I'm like, this is a bad idea. I just backed right up and survived.
There you go. Well, you were in this kill zone. It had it all mapped out.
Oh yeah. Him and his 4 other raccoon buddies. I couldn't identify them. They're all wearing masks. Yeah.
On that note, done.
Yeah. I really won't have anything more intelligent to say.
Is there anything that we haven't asked you or that we haven't talked about yet that you really wanted to touch today?
For everybody who's interested in RPGs, don't just look at the big companies. Look at the smaller independent guys. My man Levi Combs, Planet X Games.
Yeah.
Jim Wampler, Mud Puppy Games. My buddies Ian McGarty and Rocky Gardner from Silver Boulay. Give the smaller companies some attention because they are doing it because they want to and are not necessarily getting a paycheck from it.
Right.
Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, Rob Schwab from Demon Lord, he is probably the best RPG designer there is. And he does it full time, so I'm not shitting on anybody who does it for a paycheck. Shadow of the Demon Lord. Wanted to get the title correct. Right. Yeah, Rob is like as good as it gets in game
He's
design.
amazing. Yeah.
He's done so much and then went out on his own and hit it so great. And his fans, I mean, cult-like in the best possible way. They love Rob. Rob loves them, and he's fantastic. Yeah, give the small publishers some love.
That's awesome, man. Skeeter Green, you have been an absolute joy to talk to, and I really appreciate your time, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. This has been a blast.
All right. You take care. All right. Thanks again to Skeeter Green for being a fantastic guest. If you want to contact Skeeter about his games or about his sweet D&D tattoo, look up Skeeter Green Productions on Facebook or follow the link in the show notes. His Kickstarter campaign for Cryptocodex is live until March 16th, so please follow the link to show some love for that completely insane and wonderful product. Thanks for watching and or listening. I've been Nate Magnuski, despite my best efforts, and from the entire Pot of Blunders family, may all your Ds be 12s.